building.
Threat level is critical.
Into a
Update all
choking gray
positions.
fog.
Copy. Rerouting now.
Major
Confirmed.
Elena
Deploying
Kess tried to
countermeasures.
move her
Good.
left
Keep that
leg
channel clear.
And immediately
Militia
regretted
Unit
it.
3 is compromised.
The pain
Briefing now.
shot up from her
Deploying
ankle like
support to Sector
electricity,
9.
white hot and blinding. Trapped again. She could hear them outside. The Vorkth warriors. Their heavy footsteps crunched through the debris of what used to be
shooting
downtown
protocol
New
terminus.
Gettysburg. Each footfall
Access
sent
confirmed.
vibrations
Proceeding.
through the shattered floor beneath her. They were close, maybe 30 meters, maybe less. Her radio crackled. Static, then a voice. Barely audible. Ghost Actual, this is command. Vorkth forces converging on your position. 500 meters and closing. 300. 100. Elena reached for the transmit button. Her hand was shaking. She hated that her hand was shaking. 37 years old, 9 years of war, 1,000 battles. And her hand still shook when death came calling. She pressed the button. Copy that command. I'm pinned. Structure collapse. Left leg compromised. A pause. Then the voice came back quieter this time. Admiral Kess is requesting your status. Elena closed her eyes. Of course she was. The woman who commanded humanity's entire military fleet, and she was still checking on individual squad leaders trapped in collapsing buildings. Some things never changed. Tell the Admiral, I'm handling it, Elena said. Another pause. She says those are her words, from New Austin, 9 years ago. And just like that, Elena was no longer in the ruins of New Gettysburg. She was no longer a major with a crushed leg and Vorkth warriors closing in from all sides. She was 28 years old again, standing in the operations center beneath New Austin Colony, watching the sky turn black with 500 alien warships. That was where it started. That was where humanity learned what it meant to fight predators. 9 years earlier, the throne room of Supreme Warlord Draxon stretched the length of 3 warships. The ceiling vaulted high enough to swallow sound, making every footstep of every warrior echo like thunder. The walls were decorated with the skulls of conquered species, hundreds of them, thousands. Some were massive with eye sockets large enough to crawl through. Others were tiny, delicate things that would fit in the palm of a human hand. All of them had been defeated. Draxon sat on his throne at the far end of the chamber. The throne itself was carved from a single piece of obsidian, its surface polished to mirror brightness. He was 8.5 feet tall with scales the color of midnight covering every inch of his body. His eyes glowed amber in the dim light, predator's eyes that could track heat signatures through walls, through darkness, through the void of space itself. He had ruled the Vorkth Dominion for 114 years. He had killed 47 challengers in ritual combat to keep his throne. His scales bore the scars of 2 centuries of warfare. Burns, cuts, puncture wounds, each one a story, each one a victory. The scout approached on foot as tradition demanded. No technology in the presence of the warlord. No weapons, just flesh and scale and the weight of the report to be delivered. The scout dropped to one knee 50 paces from the throne. Supreme Warlord, we have found a new species. Draxon did not move. He had received this news 1,000 times before. A new species was discovered every few cycles. Most surrendered immediately. The ones that didn't died quickly. Where, he asked? Edge of the galaxy, outer spiral arm, a small blue planet orbiting an average yellow star. They call it Earth. How many? 12 billion, my lord, scattered across their homeworld and 3 colony sites. New Austin on Proxima Centauri. Armstrong station in orbit around their 4th planet. Liberty Falls on one of their gas giants' moons. Draxon's claws tapped against the armrest of his throne. 12 billion, that was more than most species. More than the Centauri who had folded after a single demonstration of force. More than the Asari Collective, who had lasted 6 months before their council voted for surrender. What is their military strength? The scout hesitated. That hesitation told Draxon everything he needed to know. Their fastest ship achieves 0.3 light speed. Our dreadnoughts reach 0.95. Their primary weapons are kinetic missiles, chemical propellant. Their energy output per vessel is approximately 1/3 of our smallest corvette. Silence filled the throne room. Then Draxon laughed. It was a sound like rocks grinding together. Cold, cruel. A sound that had not been heard in the throne room for 3 years, not since the warlord had last found something genuinely amusing. They are prey, he said. Nothing but soft, weak prey. The scout bowed lower. Yes, my lord. Tell me about their bodies. They stand 5 to 6 feet tall. No natural armor, no claws, no fangs. Their skin breaks easily. Their bones fracture under moderate impact. They require constant food and water. Their eyes cannot see in darkness. They are slow compared to our warriors. In every physical metric, they are inferior. Draxon rose from his throne. The movement was fluid, graceful in the way that apex predators move. He descended the steps slowly, each footfall deliberate. When he reached the scout, he towered over the smaller Vorth by nearly 2 feet. "You have served me well," Draxon said. "What is your name?" "Krathvar, my lord." "Tell me, Krathvar, in all your years of scouting, have you ever seen a species this weak survive long enough to reach the stars?" The scout considered the question carefully. "No, my lord. Most species this fragile die out during their evolution. Predators consume them. They lack the strength to compete. And yet these humans survived." "Yes, my lord." "How?" Now the scout looked up. His eyes met Draxon's for just a moment before dropping again. "The planet is unusual, my lord. It has more large predators per square kilometer than any world we have surveyed. Large carnivores with teeth and claws. Smaller pack hunters that work in coordinated groups. Ocean predators that can swallow a human whole. Flying predators that strike from above. And the humans themselves preyed upon each other for most of their history. Then how are there 12 billion of them?" "They adapt, my lord, Ontgate. They learn to make tools, sharp rocks at first, then spears, then bows, then chemical propellant weapons. They learn to work together in groups. They learn to track prey across vast distances. They evolved something called persistence hunting. They would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. They are not fast, but they never stop moving." Draxon considered this. "Prey that learn to hunt. Interesting. Should I be concerned, my lord?" The warlord's laugh came again, softer this time. "No, Krathavar. Prey is prey. It does not matter if a prey animal learns tricks. In the end, it still dies when the predator strikes." He turned away, moving back toward his throne. "Summon Fleet Commander Thelraxus. We will add Earth to the Dominion." Fleet Commander Thelraxus stood at attention in the war room. Around him, holographic displays showed the tactical situation of every border sector in the Dominion. 643 systems, 847 inhabited worlds, 312 species paying tribute, and growing. Thelraxus was 62 years old. Young for a fleet commander, but his record spoke for itself. 18 world conquests, 0 defeats. He had learned the Vorkth way of war from his father, who had learned it from his father going back 12 generations to the first days of the Dominion. Overwhelming force, brutal efficiency, no mercy. Draxon entered the war room flanked by his personal guard. Thelraxus dropped to one knee immediately. The other officers in the room followed suit. "Rise, Commander," Draxon said. "We have work to do." The holographic display shifted. Earth appeared in the center of the room, rotating slowly. Blue oceans, green continents, white clouds. It looked peaceful, harmless. "This is your next target," Draxon said. "The humans. 12 billion of them. 3 colony worlds. Primitive technology. Your assessment." Thelraxus studied the display. He pulled up ship counts, defensive installations, orbital platforms. The numbers were laughable. "They have approximately 300 warships," he said, "total, across all 4 worlds. Their largest vessel mass is 800,000 tons. Our dreadnoughts mass 6 million. Their weapons are kinetic and chemical-based. Effective range approximately 50,000 kilometers. Our plasma lances strike accurately at 200,000 kilometers. And your recommendation? 500 ships should be more than sufficient. 50,000 warriors for ground operations if they refuse to surrender. I estimate 7 rotations from arrival to complete pacification." One of the other commanders in the room, a grizzled veteran named Zarkoth, spoke up. "Commander, if I may, 7 rotations seems optimistic. Even the weakest species usually requires at least a month to fully subjugate." Thelraxus turned to face him. "Have you reviewed the tactical data, Commander Zarkoth?" "I have." "Then you have seen that the humans are physically inferior in every measurable way. They are slow, they are weak, they have no natural weapons. Their technology is 300 years behind ours. What possible reason would justify a longer timeline?" Zarkoth hesitated. There is one detail in the scout report that concerns me. The humans evolved on a death world. Everything on their planet tried to kill them. They survived by adapting. Adapting is not the same as winning, Commander. A prey animal may adapt to hide better, to run faster, to blend into its environment. It is still prey. When we arrive, when they see 500 warships blocking out their sun, they will understand what they are facing. They will surrender as all prey surrenders when confronted by overwhelming power. Draxon raised his hand. The discussion ended immediately. Commander Thelraxis will take 500 ships to Earth, the warlord said. He will offer them terms. Surrender and serve the Dominion, or resist and be destroyed. If they choose resistance, he will demonstrate our power. One city reduced to ash. That is usually enough to break their spirit. And if it is not enough, my lord, Thelraxis asked, then you will break them piece by piece until nothing remains but the understanding that the Vorth cannot be defeated. Thelraxis bowed. It will be done, Supreme Warlord. 7 rotations. I will deliver Earth to you in chains. Captain Elena Kess stood on the observation deck of the New Austin Colony Administration Building and watched the stars. She had been stationed here for 3 months. 3 months of training and exercises. 3 months of drilling the Colonial Defense Force. 3 months of preparing for something that everyone hoped would never come. But now it was here. The sensors had picked up the anomaly 6 hours ago. 500 ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. 500 ships all broadcasting the same identifier. Vorth Dominion. Elena had heard the stories. Everyone had. The empire that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. The species that had never lost a war. The hunters that made entire civilizations kneel. And now they were here. Her comm unit chirped. She tapped it. Kess. Captain, this is General Drake. Report to Command Center immediately. On my way, sir. She took one last look at the stars. Somewhere out there, 500 warships were accelerating toward New Austin. 500 ships carrying weapons that could turn the entire colony into molten glass. The command center was 60 meters underground, carved into the bedrock beneath the colony. It had been built during the early days of colonization, back when humanity still feared attack from unknown threats. That fear had faded over the years. New Austin had been peaceful, safe. That peace was about to end. General Silas Drake stood at the central tactical display. He was 58 years old with gray hair and a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. He had spent 30 years in special forces before transferring to colonial defense. He had seen combat, real combat, the kind that left scars. Captain Kess, he said without looking up. Status of 3rd Battalion. Combat ready, sir. 240 soldiers, fully armed and equipped. Defensive positions established in sectors 7 through 12. Good. And the civilians? Evacuation to underground shelters is 73% complete. We're moving as fast as we can, but there's only so much capacity. Drake finally looked up. His eyes were tired. There are 247,000 civilians on New Austin, Captain. Even if we evacuate every single one of them to the shelters, those shelters were only designed to hold 50,000. The rest will be exposed when the Vorth arrive. Elena said nothing. There was nothing to say. The numbers told the story. Have you heard from your brother? Drake asked. He's with the militia, Sector 9. He messaged me 2 hours ago. He's scared, but he's ready. He's 18 years old. He should be scared. The tactical display updated. The Vorth fleet was decelerating. They would reach orbit in approximately 14 hours. Drake touched a control and a new window opened. It showed a message that had been transmitted from the Vorth fleet. Elena read it quickly. People of New Austin, this world now belongs to the Vorth Dominion. You have 2 choices. Surrender immediately and serve us as subjects of the Empire, or resist and be completely destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide. Choose wisely. Elena felt something cold settle into her stomach. Not fear exactly. Something else, something harder. What are our orders, sir? She asked. Drake closed the message window. 3 days ago, I received a transmission from Earth, from the Security Council. It was a single word. Terminus. Elena's breath caught. She knew that word. Every officer in the Colonial Defense Force knew that word. Protocol Terminus. The last resort contingency plan. Sir, if we activate Terminus, We've already activated it, Captain. 3 days ago, the moment we detected the Vorkth scouts in our system. He pulled up another display. This one showed New Austin from above. The city sprawled across a valley between two mountain ranges. 247,000 people. Homes, schools, parks, markets. And underneath all of it, invisible on any scan, a network of tunnels and chambers that had been dug over the past 3 months. We've spent the last 90 days preparing for this, Drake said. Every major building has been rigged with demolition charges. Every intersection has buried explosives. The entire tunnel network is stocked with weapons, ammunition, medical supplies, and food for 6 months. We've trained every civilian over the age of 16 in basic combat skills. We've established rally points, evacuation routes, and resistance cells. They don't know, Elena said quietly. No, they don't know. The Vorkth scouts have been watching us for 3 months, and they think we're nothing but frightened colonists scrambling to survive. They don't know that we've been preparing for exactly this scenario for the past 30 years. Back on Earth, teams of scientists have been developing weapons in secret. Dr. Vivian Archer's division alone has created technology the Vorkth have never seen. We're not as helpless as we appear. Elena looked at the general. 30 years, Drake nodded. First contact protocols were established in 2127, the year we detected our first alien signal. The Security Council made a decision that day. If humanity ever encountered a hostile species, we would not go quietly. We would make them pay for every inch of ground, every building, every life. We would show them what it means to fight a species that evolved on a death world. He pulled up a new file. Elena recognized the seal. United Earth Command, eyes only. Project Silent Sentinel, Drake said. 30 years of preparation, 5,000 hidden shipyards built across the asteroid belt, 4,700 warships constructed in secret, 500 million citizens trained in resistance warfare, every colony fortified, every major city on Earth turned into a fortress, all of it waiting for the day when someone decided to test humanity. And that day is today. Yes, Captain, that day is today. The tactical display updated again. The Vorkth fleet was 12 hours out, 12 hours until they reached orbit, 12 hours until they demanded New Austin's surrender. Elena felt her hand drift to the pistol on her hip, not the standard issue sidearm, her personal weapon, a gift from her father. He had carried it in the urban pacification campaigns on Earth. She had carried it through every deployment since joining the service. She had never fired it in combat. What do we tell them, she asked. When they demand our surrender, what do we say? Drake looked at her for a long moment. Then he smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just realized its prey was walking into a trap. We tell them the truth, Captain. We tell them to come down here and take what they want, if they think they can. 12 hours later, the Vorkth fleet settled into orbit around Proxima Centauri. 500 warships, each one large enough to carry a small city's worth of warriors. Their weapons powered up targeting systems, locking onto every major structure in the colony below. Thelraxis stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Predator. He watched the colony through the view screen. It looked peaceful from orbit. Lights twinkling in the darkness. Air traffic still moving between buildings. No visible defensive installations. No weapons platforms. Nothing that suggested the humans were prepared to fight. He activated the communication system. People of New Austin, he said. His voice was translated into human language by the ship's computers. I am Fleet Commander Thelraxis of the Vorkth Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. You have two choices. Surrender immediately and serve us as subjects of the Empire, or resist and be completely destroyed. You have 1 hour to decide. He waited. This was standard procedure. Every species responded the same way. First came silence, then came frantic communication between their leaders. Then came the desperate pleas for negotiation. Then came surrender. But the humans did not follow the standard pattern. Instead, after only 30 seconds, a message came back. Audio only, a single voice. Female. Calm. This is Captain Elena Kess of the United Earth Colonial Defense Force. We have received your message and considered your offer. Thelraxis leaned forward. This was unexpected. Usually it took at least 20 minutes for their leaders to respond, and they always tried to negotiate first. You have considered our offer, he said. And what is your answer? There was a pause, just for a moment, just long enough for Thelraxis to hear something in the background of the transmission. Something that sounded like metal sliding against metal, weapons being loaded. Then the human's voice came back, still calm, still steady. Come down. Thelraxis stared at the view screen. 2 words, just 2 words. No pleading, no negotiation, no attempt to buy time. Come down. I do not think you understand your situation, he said slowly. We have 500 warships in orbit above your world. We have 50,000 warriors ready to deploy. Your colony has a population of 247,000 civilians and approximately 3,000 soldiers. You have no orbital defenses, no warships, no way to resist us. If you refuse to surrender, we will burn your city to ash and enslave every survivor. Another pause. Then the human's voice came back. We understand perfectly. Come down. Thelraxis felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Confusion. He turned to his tactical officer. Are they insane? Do they not understand what will happen to them? The tactical officer checked his screens. Sir, our sensors show elevated activity throughout the colony. Heat signatures consistent with weapons fire. Movement in underground structures. They appear to be preparing for combat. Against us, yes, sir. Thelraxis turned back to the view screen. This had never happened before. In 18 conquests and 62 years of life, he had never encountered a species that refused to negotiate, that refused to surrender, that simply said, come down, and waited for death. He made a decision. Deploy ground forces, 10,000 warriors, full combat loadout. We will teach these humans the price of defiance. The invasion force launched from the fleet. 10,000 Vorkth warriors in 200 dropships falling through the atmosphere like meteors. They would land in perfect formation around the city. They would secure the perimeter. They would march through the streets and force the humans to kneel. This would be over in hours. Thelraxis had no idea that he had just made the worst mistake of his life. He had no idea that those 10,000 warriors were descending into a trap that had been prepared for 3 months, refined for 30 years, and perfected by a species that had learned to survive on a planet where everything wanted them dead. He had no idea that in 30 days only 5,813 of those warriors would still be alive. The hunters were about to learn what it meant to hunt prey that hunted back. The first dropship touched down in the northern plaza at 0547 hours. The second followed 30 seconds later. Then the third, then 10 more, then 100. The sky above New Austin turned black with descending craft, their engines roaring like thunder, their hulls glowing red from atmospheric friction. Inside each dropship, Vorkth warriors stood in perfect formation. 8 feet of muscle and scale and predatory focus. They had done this 1,000 times before. Land, deploy, secure, subjugate. It was as natural to them as breathing. The dropships settled into their designated positions. Ramps descended. Warriors emerged in disciplined ranks, weapons, ready eyes scanning for targets. And they found nothing. The plaza was empty, not abandoned, empty. The difference was subtle but unmistakable. Abandoned meant hasty retreat, signs of panic belongings scattered in flight. Empty meant deliberate, planned. The streetlights were still on. Power hummed through the grid. Storefronts displayed their wares behind glass windows. A public fountain still sprayed water into the morning air, its pattern perfectly timed as if someone had just programmed it moments ago. But there were no people. Squad leader Krath moved forward, his taloned feet clicking against the paved street. His thermal vision scanned the buildings looking for heat signatures. Nothing. His audio sensors filtered through the ambient sounds, searching for breathing heartbeats, movement. Silence. He activated his comm. Command, this is Ground Team Alpha. Plaza secured. No resistance encountered. No targets visible. The response came immediately. Confirmed Alpha. Beta through Omega teams reporting identical situations. The city appears abandoned. Krath looked up at the buildings surrounding the plaza. Windows stared back like empty eyes. Somewhere a door creaked in the wind. A banner advertising some human festival fluttered from a lamppost. Advance, he ordered his squad. Standard search pattern. Check every building. They moved forward, 20 warriors in perfect formation. They had trained for urban combat. They knew how to clear rooms, how to secure positions, how to identify threats before threats identified them. They made it exactly 47 meters before the world exploded. The IED had been buried beneath the street 3 weeks ago. 200 kilograms of commercial mining explosive packed into a composite casing that scattered radar signatures triggered by a pressure sensor calibrated to activate only when multiple heavy targets crossed the threshold simultaneously. The blast carved a crater 4 meters deep and 12 meters wide. The shockwave shattered windows in a 50-meter radius. 5 Vorkth warriors died instantly. Another 8 were thrown through the air. Their armor cracked, their bodies broken. Before the smoke cleared, the second explosion went off 2 blocks away, then a third, then a fourth, and then the city came alive. Elena Kess watched through the scope of her rifle from her position on the 17th floor of what used to be an apartment building. The crosshairs settled on a Vorkth warrior who was trying to drag his wounded companion to cover. She could see the panic in his movements, the confusion, the realization that something had gone very, very wrong. She exhaled slowly, squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. 1,500 meters away, the Vorkth warrior's head snapped back. He fell and did not move. "Target down," she said into her comm. "Sector 7, clear for maneuver." "Copy that, Ghost Lead," came the response. "Third squad moving to flank." Elena shifted her aim, found another target. A Vorkth officer identifiable by the ornate markings on his armor. He was barking orders, trying to organize his scattered troops. She fired again. The officer fell. Around her, the city had transformed into a war zone. What had seemed like empty streets 30 seconds ago now swarmed with human fighters. They emerged from underground tunnels. They appeared on rooftops. They materialized from behind barricades that had been invisible moments before. And they were everywhere. Krath's squad had been reduced to 11 warriors. 11 out of the 20 who had entered the plaza. The rest were dead or dying, scattered across the blood-slicked pavement. He had taken cover behind an overturned vehicle. His armor showed 3 impacts. 2 had been deflected. The third had cracked a scale on his left shoulder. He could feel the blood running down his arm. This was not supposed to happen. The humans were supposed to be weak, frightened, disorganized. They were supposed to surrender the moment they saw Vorkth warriors. Instead, they were fighting like something Krath had never encountered before. They did not stand in formations. They did not face their enemies directly. They struck from shadows and disappeared before retaliation was possible. They used the terrain, the buildings, the debris. They turned every corner into an ambush, every doorway into a death trap. "Fall back," Krath shouted to his remaining warriors. "Establish defensive perimeter." But there was nowhere to fall back to. Every street was a killing field. Every building concealed snipers. Every path of retreat led into another trap. A warrior to his left went down his throat, opened by a bullet he never saw coming. Another fell with a knife in his back, planted by a human who had crawled through a drainage pipe and attacked from below. Krath activated his comm. "Command, this is Alpha Leader. Request immediate extraction. We are sustaining heavy casualties. Repeat, heavy casualties. The humans are..." The building above him exploded. Someone had planted demolition charges on the support columns. The entire structure came down in a cascade of concrete and steel and glass. Krath dove forward, but the debris wave caught him. His armor saved his life, but barely. When he crawled free of the rubble, he found himself alone. His squad was gone. All of them. Buried or scattered or dead. And standing 50 meters away, at the end of the street, was a single human soldier. Ryan Kess was 18 years old. He had lied about his age to enlist, claiming he was 21. Elena had found out 3 months ago and had threatened to report him. He had begged her not to, said he wanted to serve, wanted to protect people. She had let him stay. Now she watched through her scope as Ryan stood at the end of Meridian Street, holding a detonator in his left hand and a rifle in his right. He was bait. The Vorkth warrior crawling from the rubble would see him, would think him an easy target, would advance. And when the warrior crossed the intersection, the charges Ryan had spent 2 days placing in the underground parking garage would detonate, bringing down the entire city block. Elena saw her brother smile, saw him wave at the Vorkth warrior, taunting him. The warrior rose to his feet, raised his weapon. Ryan ran. The warrior pursued. Elena held her breath. Her finger hovered over her comm trigger, ready to shout a warning if the warrior changed direction, if the trap failed, if anything went wrong. Ryan reached the intersection, sprinted across. The warrior followed, moving with predatory speed. Ryan hit the detonator. Nothing happened. Elena's heart stopped. The charges should have blown, should have brought the entire structure down, should have buried the warrior under 1,000 tons of concrete. Ryan looked down at the detonator, shook it, pressed it again. The warrior was 10 meters away. 5, 3. Elena squeezed her trigger. The bullet took the warrior in the throat just above the collar of his armor. He stumbled, fell to one knee, but he did not fall alone. His weapon fired on reflex. A 3-round burst. Plasma bolts that turned the air itself into fire. 2 missed, 1 did not. Ryan went down. Elena was moving before her brother hit the ground. She abandoned her rifle, abandoned her position, abandoned every tactical protocol she had ever learned. She ran down 17 flights of stairs, her boots hammering against concrete, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She hit the street at full sprint. Ryan was lying in the intersection. His chest was a ruin of burned flesh and shattered ribs. The plasma bolt had punched straight through his body armor. She could smell burning, could see the edges of the wound still smoking. She dropped to her knees beside him. Ryan, stay with me. His eyes opened, focused on her face. He tried to speak. Blood bubbled from his lips. The detonator, he whispered. I checked it 3 times. I know you did. She grabbed his hand, squeezed. Medic, I need a medic. But there were no medics, not here, not now. The city was a war zone. Help was not coming. Ryan's grip tightened on her hand. Did I get him? Elena looked over her shoulder. The Vorkth warrior lay 5 meters away, still and silent. Dead. You got him, she said. You got him, Ryan. He smiled. It was a weak smile, fading fast. Tell Mom, I was brave. You were so brave. His eyes closed. His hand went limp in hers, and Elena Kess learned what it meant to hate. The battle raged for 6 hours that first day. By the time the sun set, the Vorkth had managed to secure 3 city blocks, 3 blocks out of 87, and they had paid for those blocks with the lives of 2,340 warriors. Thelraxis watched the casualty reports scroll across his command screen. The numbers did not make sense, could not make sense. His forces had overwhelming superiority, better weapons, better armor, better training, and yet they were dying. Not just dying, being slaughtered. His tactical officer approached his scales pale with stress. Commander, the ground teams are requesting immediate reinforcement. They report that the humans are using unconventional tactics. The city itself has been turned into a weapon. Every building is rigged with explosives. Every street has buried mines. They are fighting from tunnels that do not appear on any scan. How many humans are we facing? Thelraxis demanded. Unknown, Commander. Our warriors report engagement with small units, 5 to 10 soldiers at a time, but they appear and disappear without pattern. We cannot establish their total numbers. Thelraxis pulled up the tactical display. The city was marked with red indicators. Each one represented a site of engagement. There were hundreds of them. Hundreds of small battles, each one costing Vorkth lives. What are our losses, he asked, though he already knew the answer. 2,340 confirmed dead, another 800 wounded. We estimate 30% combat effectiveness reduction in ground forces. In 6 hours, the humans had reduced his invasion force by 30%. Thelraxis made a decision. Pull back all ground troops to secured zones. Establish defensive perimeters. No more advances until we understand what we are facing. Sir, that is against doctrine. We are Vorkth. We do not retreat. And we are not retreating. We are regrouping. Thelraxis turned to face his officer. Tell me something. In all your years of service, have you ever seen a prey species fight like this? The officer hesitated, then shook his head. Neither have I, Thelraxis said quietly, which means we need to reconsider what these humans actually are. The battle for New Austin lasted 30 days. 30 days of street fighting. 30 days of ambushes and counter-ambushes. 30 days of Vorkth warriors learning that size and strength meant nothing when every shadow concealed a sniper. Every doorway hid a bomb. Every tunnel system provided routes for humans to appear behind defensive lines. Elena's squad fought through all of it. They learned to move without sound, to kill without being seen, to survive when survival seemed impossible. On day 7, they ambushed a Vork supply convoy, killed 23 warriors, lost 3 of their own. On day 12, they held a hospital for 16 hours against 200 Vork, evacuated 400 wounded civilians through underground tunnels while the enemy pounded the building to rubble. On day 19, they trapped an entire Vork company in the old subway system, sealed the exits, flooded the tunnels with a mix of natural gas and oxygen, lit it from a distance. 147 Vork burned alive in the darkness beneath the city. Elena stopped counting her kills after day 23. The number had become meaningless. This was not about glory or honor or individual achievement. This was about making the Vork pay for every meter of ground, making them understand that humans would never stop fighting, never surrender, never break. On day 28, they captured a wounded Vork warrior. His designation was Tactical Unit Zarvek. He had been separated from his squad during a tunnel collapse. His left arm was missing, severed at the shoulder by falling debris. His blood, which turned out to be dark purple, pooled on the concrete floor. Elena stood over him. 30 days of combat, 30 days of watching friends die. 30 days of living in tunnels and eating cold rations and sleeping in 2-hour shifts with one hand on her weapon. "Kill me," the warrior said in broken human language. "Kill me and be done with it." Elena shook her head. "We don't kill prisoners." "Then you are fools. We would not show you such mercy." "We know." The warrior coughed. Blood sprayed from his mouth. His remaining arm clutched at the wound where his limb had been. "Why do you fight? You cannot win. We have 500 ships. You have nothing. We will grind you down. We will crush you. Every human in this city will die." Elena knelt beside him, looked into his eyes, amber eyes that glowed with predatory intensity, now dimming with blood loss. "You want to know why we fight," she said. "I'll tell you. It's because we're not like you. You fight for dominance, for territory, for glory. We fight for something you'll never understand." "And what is that? Home. The warrior laughed. It was a weak sound, more of a wheeze. "Home, you think that makes you special? Every species fights for their home." "No," Elena said. "They fight until it stops being worth it, until the cost is too high, until survival becomes more important than victory. They surrender and they rebuild, and they learn to live under new masters." She stood up, turned away from him. "We don't do that. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every single day for 1,000,000 years. We survived things that would have made your species extinct. We learned that you don't stop fighting just because you're losing. You stop fighting when you're dead, and sometimes not even then." Behind her, the warrior's breathing grew more labored. "You made a mistake coming here," she said. "You thought we were prey. You thought we would run or hide or surrender. But we're not prey. We're the species that learned to hunt the hunters. We're the ones that survived by being more stubborn, more vicious, more willing to pay the price than anything that tried to kill us." She walked toward the door. "You picked the wrong fight." The warrior died 30 minutes later. His last words, translated by one of the human medics who tried to save him, were simple. Tell the commander, we were wrong about them." Elsewhere in the city, another story was unfolding. Corporal Declan Walsh was 32 years old. He had been a construction worker before the war. Built houses, raised barns, good, honest work with his hands. When the Vorth came, he volunteered. Figured his skills with explosives might be useful. He was right. Now he lay in the ruins of what used to be a marketplace, his body broken by a plasma blast that had caught him during a fighting retreat. His squad was gone, dead or scattered. He was alone. A Vorth patrol found him. Their leader, a young officer named Krathvar, approached cautiously, weapon raised, ready for a trap. But there was no trap, just a dying human with a smile on his face. "Why do you smile?" Krathvar demanded. "You are dying. Your city is lost. Your people will be enslaved. Why do you smile?" Declan coughed. Blood ran down his chin. He looked up at the towering alien warrior and laughed. "Because you still don't understand," he said. "You think you're the predators. You think we're the prey. But you've never fought something like us before." "What are you?" Krathavar asked. Declan's eyes met his. There was no fear in them, only a fierce, burning determination. "We're the species that hunted mammoths with sticks. We're the species that climbed from caves to stars in 100,000 years. We're the prey that became predators. And you just picked a fight with the most stubborn, vengeful, creative killers in the galaxy. His voice grew weaker, but his words remained clear. You want to know what we are? We're the species that figured out how to hunt the hunters. We're not the strongest, we're not the fastest, but we never ever give up. And you're going to learn that lesson the hard way. Declan Walsh died with a smile on his face. Krathavar stood alone in the ruins, surrounded by the bodies of his warriors. For the first time in his life, he felt something cold crawling through his chest, fear. But the Vorth were not ready to admit they were wrong. Not yet. They brought in reinforcements. 5,000 more warriors, heavy armor, artillery. They bombarded entire sections of the city from orbit, reducing blocks to rubble. And the humans adapted. They moved deeper underground. They turned the sewers into fortresses. They used the rubble as cover. They stole Vorkth weapons and learned to fire them. They captured Vorkth supply depots and used the food, the ammunition, the medical supplies. They became ghosts, shadows, things that struck without warning and vanished without trace. On day 30, the Vorkth finally broke through to the city center. They raised their flag over what remained of the administration building. They claimed victory, but their victory was hollow. Of the 15,000 warriors deployed to take New Austin, only 10,813 remained alive. 4,187 had died in 30 days of fighting, and the humans had not surrendered. Even as the Vorkth flag flew over the ruins, human fighters continued to operate from the tunnel systems, continued to strike, continued to bleed the occupying force. The last official defender died on day 31. Her name was Margaret Winters. 67 years old, a retired school teacher. She had spent 40 years teaching history to children, taught them about wars and revolutions and the price of freedom. She died defending a tunnel entrance with a hunting rifle that belonged to her late husband. She killed 2 Vorkth warriors before their return fire cut her down. They found her body 3 hours later, still gripping the rifle, still facing the enemy. One of the Vorkth warriors who had killed her stood over her body and stared down at the frail human form. 67 years old, barely 5.5 feet tall, no armor, no training, no chance, and yet she had fought. Why? The warrior whispered to the corpse. Why would you do this? You had to know you would Why not surrender? Why not save yourself? The body, of course, did not answer, but somewhere in the tunnels beneath the city, the humans heard about Margaret Winters, heard how she had fought to the end, heard how she had taken 2 Vorkth warriors with her, and they carved her name into the tunnel wall along with all the others who had fallen. Never forget, never surrender, never stop fighting. Thelraxus stood in the ruins of New Austin and tried to feel victorious, tried to tell himself that this had been a success. They had taken the city, they had defeated the human defenders, but the Kishtawan, 4,187 dead, more than he had lost in his previous 18 conquests combined, more than any Vorkth commander had lost in 300 years. And this was just one city, one colony, one tiny fraction of human civilization. He activated his comm, connected to the flagship, requested secure channel to Supreme Warlord Draxan. The connection established. Draxan's face appeared on the screen, amber eyes burning. Report, the warlord commanded. Thelraxus chose his words carefully. My lord, New Austin has fallen. The city is under our control. Excellent. And the casualty ratio? This was the moment Thelraxus had been dreading. Vorkth losses total 4,187 dead. Human defenders numbered approximately 3,000, of which we estimate 1,203 were killed in combat. Silence. Long, terrible silence. Then Draxan spoke, his voice colder than the void of space. You lost 4,000 warriors to kill 1,000 humans. Yes, my lord. How long did this battle last? 30 days, my lord. You told me this conquest would take 7 rotations. 7. You have failed spectacularly, Commander. My lord, these humans are not like any species we have encountered. They do not fight with honor. They use guerrilla tactics. They turn their own cities into weapons. I do not want excuses, Commander. I want results. Draxan leaned forward. You will have your reinforcements. I am sending you 5,000 ships, 50 times your original force. You will crush these humans completely. You will make them pay for every Vorkth life they have taken. You will show them what happens when prey dares to bare its teeth. My lord, I must advise caution. These humans are dangerous. They, dangerous, Droxine's laugh was like grinding stone. They are prey, Commander. Clever prey, perhaps. Stubborn prey, but prey nonetheless. Enough ships, enough warriors, overwhelming force. That is how we conquer. That is how we have always conquered. The connection severed. Thelraxus stood alone in the ruins of New Austin. Around him, his warriors moved through the rubble, securing positions, establishing perimeters, counting the dead. Somewhere beneath his feet in the tunnels that honeycombed the earth, human fighters still waited in the darkness, still watching, still preparing for the next battle. And Thelraxus felt something he had never felt in 62 years of life. Doubt. Not doubt that they would win. The Vorkth would win. They had the numbers, the technology, the experience. But doubt about the price they would pay. Doubt about what would remain of the Vorkth when this war finally ended. Doubt about whether prey that fought like this could truly be called prey at all. He looked up at the sky where 5,000 ships would soon arrive. Reinforcements meant to overwhelm and annihilate. And he wondered if it would be enough. The reinforcements arrived 3 weeks after New Austin fell, 5,000 ships. Each one a cathedral of death, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, so many that they blocked the light of distant stars. Droxon had sent a message with the fleet, a simple one. No more half measures, no more restraint. Burn them, break them. Show the galaxy what happens when prey forgets its place. The ships dispersed across human space. Armstrong Station, Liberty Falls, New Boston, New Shanghai, Terra Nova. Every colony, every outpost, every settlement that flew the flag of Earth. The long war had begun. Armstrong Station fell in 6 weeks. The station orbited humanity's fourth planet, a massive structure housing 2.1 million civilians and a garrison of 12,000 military personnel. It was the largest human installation outside Earth orbit, a symbol of humanity's reach toward the stars. The Vorkth fleet arrived with overwhelming force, 200 ships, enough firepower to reduce the station to atoms. The evacuation began immediately. 800,000 civilians made it onto transport ships before the Vorkth blockade tightened. The rest remained behind, trapped. But they were not defenseless. The 12,000 military personnel had been preparing for this moment. The station's structure had been modified over 3 months. Bulkheads reinforced, weapon systems hidden in maintenance bays, explosives planted in critical junctions, and every civilian who could hold a weapon had been trained to fight. The battle lasted 6 weeks. The Vorkth boarded in waves, expected quick victory. Instead, they found themselves fighting for every corridor, every section, every cubic meter of pressurized air. The humans used the station against them. Vented atmosphere in sections where Vorkth had gathered, sealed bulkheads to trap them, used the station's rotation to fling debris into attack formations. When ammunition ran out, they fought with tools, with pipes, with their hands. The last defender was a maintenance engineer named Marcus Okafor, 63 years old. He had spent 40 years keeping the station's life support systems running. In his final act, he overloaded the fusion reactor and transmitted one last message. For everyone who died here, for everyone who will die tomorrow, we do not go quietly. The explosion took 300 Vorkth warriors with him. Armstrong Station was gone. 2.1 million civilians dead. 12,000 military personnel killed. But the Vorkth had paid. 4,200 warriors lost to claim a space station that no longer existed. The ratio was changing. Liberty Falls evacuated before the Vorkth arrived. Every single civilian, every piece of equipment that could be moved, every scrap of data. The colony sat empty when the Vorkth fleet entered orbit. Empty buildings, empty streets, empty warehouses that should have held supplies for 500,000 people. The Vorkth sent down occupation forces anyway. 10,000 warriors to secure a ghost town. They found the bombs on day 3. The entire colony had been rigged. Not just key buildings, not just strategic locations. Everything, every structure, every tunnel, every utility conduit. The humans had spent 2 months turning their own colony into the largest explosive device in human history. The detonation was visible from orbit, A flash that briefly outshone the gas giant Liberty Falls orbited. When the light faded, the colony was gone, vaporized, and with it 8,300 Vorkth warriors who had been securing the empty buildings. Thelraxis watched the recordings, watched the light bloom, watched 8,000 of his warriors die in an instant. He sent a message to every Vorkth commander in human space. Check everything. Trust nothing. These humans will sacrifice their own cities just to kill us. But the message came too late for New Boston. The colony appeared intact when the Vorkth arrived. No evacuation, no empty streets. Civilians still moved through the markets, still worked in the factories, still lived their lives as if war had not come to their doorstep. The Vorkth demanded surrender. The humans agreed. They opened their spaceport to Vorkth occupation forces, provided maps of the city, offered no resistance. It seemed too easy. But after Armstrong Station and Liberty Falls, the Vorkth commanders were eager for a victory that did not cost thousands of lives. They should have known better. The poison was in the water supply. A biological agent developed by Dr. Vivian Archer's team on Earth designed to target Vorkth metabolism specifically. The agent had been deployed over 6 months, slowly accumulating in the city's water system. The civilians the Vorkth saw were volunteers, 30,000 people who had chosen to stay behind. Elderly, terminally ill, people who had weeks or months to live anyway. They had spent those final months creating elaborate cover identities, forged records, cloned identification chips, built an entire false population database that the Vorkth scanners would read as legitimate. The poison was tasteless, odorless, completely undetectable until symptoms appeared. Symptoms that started with fever, then paralysis, then hemorrhaging from every orifice. By the time the Vorkth doctors identified the agent, 12,000 warriors were infected. 4,000 died in the first week, another 3,000 in the second. The Vorkth retaliated by executing every human they could find in New Boston. 30,000 civilians lined up and shot, their bodies left in the streets and as a warning. But those 30,000 had already won. Each one had taken down an average of 0.4 Vorkth warriors, not with weapons, with sacrifice. The humans were teaching the galaxy a new form of warfare, not victory through strength, victory through cost, making every inch of ground so expensive that eventually the enemy could no longer afford to advance. Dr. Vivian Archer sat in her laboratory on Earth and listened to the casualty reports. Armstrong Station, Liberty Falls, New Boston, millions of humans dead, billions more in danger. She was 34 years old. 10 years ago, she had joined DARPA's Advanced Weapons Research Division. 5 years ago, she had been promoted to director. 3 years ago, she had started having nightmares about the day when humanity would need the weapons she was creating. That day had arrived. Her lab was buried 300 meters beneath the Colorado Plateau. No windows, no natural light, just endless corridors of sterile white walls and sealed doors and warning signs that read, "Authorized personnel only." She had not seen her family in 6 months. Her parents were dead. Killed in the Armstrong Station bombardment, her sister had evacuated to Mars with her 2 children. Vivian had not spoken to them since the war started, could not risk the emotional connection, could not afford the distraction. She had work to do. Dr. Archer, her assistant, appeared in the doorway, young, brilliant, scared. "The prototype is ready for testing." Vivian stood, followed him down the corridor to testing Base 7. The drone sat on the launch platform. It looked innocuous, a sphere barely 2 meters in diameter. Matte black hull, no visible weapons, no obvious threat. But inside that hull was an AI system more advanced than anything humanity had ever created. A system designed for one purpose: navigate to target, identify optimal impact point, detonate payload. Simple, efficient, deadly. "Run the simulation," Vivian said. The holographic display activated. A Vorkth dreadnought appeared rotating slowly, its weapons ports glowing with ready charge. The drone launched, accelerated to 0.9 light speed in 14 seconds. The AI calculated trajectory, compensated for the dreadnought's movement, adjusted for gravitational distortion. Impact. The simulation showed the dreadnought's shields overloading, then failing, then the hull breach, then the explosive decompression that would kill everyone aboard. "Estimated casualties," Vivian asked. 7,200 per dreadnought, Doctor, if we achieve penetration." 7,200. That was more Vorth than had died at New Austin, more than had died at New Boston, all killed by a single drone that cost less to build than a standard fighter craft. Begin production, Vivian said. I want 10,000 units ready in 6 months. Her assistant hesitated. Doctor, the International AI Ethics Committee would never approve. The committee is dead. They died at Armstrong Station. Vivian turned to face him. We are at war with a species that bombs civilians from orbit, that executes prisoners, that treats surrender as weakness and mercy as foolishness. We do not have the luxury of ethics. We have survival. She walked back toward her office. Build the drones, all of them. The war settled into a brutal stalemate. Vorth forces controlled 40% of human territory, but they could not hold it. Human resistance groups operated everywhere. Ambushes, sabotage, assassination. The Vorth adapted. They stopped occupying cities. Instead, they bombarded them from orbit, turned them to glass and ash and radioactive craters. Humans adapted too. They went underground, built shelters kilometers beneath the surface, established supply networks that could operate for years without surface contact. The casualty counts grew. 67,000 Vorths dead, 23 million humans dead. But the ratio was changing. Slowly, steadily. In the beginning, the Vorth had killed 100 humans for every warrior they lost. Now it was 30 to 1, then 20, then 15. Human technology was catching up. Stolen Vorth weapons were reverse-engineered. Captured ships were studied. Weaknesses were identified and exploited. And the Vorth were breaking. Not their armies, not their ships, their minds. The first cases appeared 6 months into year 2. Vorth warriors who refused to sleep, who would stand watch for days at a time, staring into darkness, weapons ready, waiting for attacks that never came. Then came the violence. Warriors attacking their own squad mates, claiming they had seen humans infiltrating the ranks, claiming the enemy was everywhere. Then came the suicides. 237 confirmed cases in year 2. Warriors who took their own lives rather than face another day of war, rather than close their eyes and see the faces of the humans they had killed, rather than hear the singing that haunted their dreams. The Vorth military had no protocols for this. In 3,000 years of conquest, they had never needed them. Their warriors did not break, did not falter, did not fear. But they feared now. They feared the humans who attacked from shadows and disappeared like smoke. They feared the children who smiled while throwing grenades. They feared the elderly who triggered bombs with their dying breaths. Most of all, they feared the singing. Humans sang when they fought. Old songs, songs about freedom and sacrifice and standing against tyranny. They sang when they charged into certain death, sang when they held impossible positions, sang when they knew they were going to die. The Vorth did not understand it, could not process it. In their culture, death was failure. Defeat was shame. But humans turned death into defiance, into victory, into something that echoed long after the battle ended. The songs haunted the Vorth survivors, played in their minds during the rare moments of quiet, whispered from empty corridors, rose from the tunnels beneath occupied cities. 8,000 Vorth warriors were on sedatives by the end of year 2. Another 3,000 were deemed unfit for combat, discharged, sent home to try to rebuild shattered minds. Thelraxis read the medical reports and felt something cold settle in his chest. They were winning the war. By every tactical metric, the Vorth were succeeding. They held the territory, destroyed the resistance, killed the enemy, but they were losing their warriors, not to human weapons, to human spirit. The breakthrough came in March. Dr. Vivian Archer's Echo drones deployed for the first time against a Vorth battle group near the Neptune outposts. 300 drones, each one carrying a 10-kiloton-shaped nuclear charge. The Vorth fleet numbered 47 ships, dreadnoughts, cruisers, destroyers, enough firepower to sterilize a continent. The drones accelerated to 0.95 light speed, too fast for point defense systems, too small for long-range targeting. Too many to stop them all. 42 drones were destroyed before impact. 258 were not. 39 Vorth ships died in the first 60 seconds. The remaining 8 tried to retreat. The drones pursued, adapted, learned. No ships escaped. The battle lasted 4 minutes. 7,000 Vorth dead, 0 human casualties. The recording spread through human military channels like wildfire. For the first time since the war began, humans had not just survived an engagement, they had won, completely, decisively. Production of Echo drones increased. 10,000 became 50,000, then 100,000. Human shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and gas giant atmospheres and the debris of destroyed stations worked day and night. The tide was beginning to turn. Elena Kess stood on the observation deck of Titan Base and watched Saturn's rings shimmer in the reflected light of the distant sun. She had been promoted to major 6 months ago, led the Ghost Battalion now, 500 soldiers, the best of the best, special operations, deep reconnaissance, impossible missions. They had lost 143 people in the past year, replaced them with new recruits, trained them, watched some of them die in their first engagement. War consumed everything: time, hope, humanity. Elena was 31 years old now. 3 years of war, 3 years of killing, 3 years of watching friends die and cities burn and civilians executed for the crime of being human. She barely recognized herself anymore. The woman who had stood in New Austin's command center and said, "Come down," seemed like a different person. Younger, more naive, still believing that courage and determination could overcome anything. Now she knew better. Courage was not enough. Determination was not enough. You survived by being more ruthless than the enemy, by sacrificing more, by enduring more, by accepting that victory meant becoming the thing you fought against. Her calm chirped, General Drake's voice. "Major Kess, report to briefing room." "On my way, sir." The briefing room was crowded, 50 officers, every one of them carrying the weight of command. The knowledge that their decisions would cost lives. The certainty that there was no good choice, only the least terrible one. General Drake stood at the display. He looked older. The war had aged him a decade in 3 years. Gray hair turned white, lines carved deep around his eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "we have a problem. Vorkth forces are converging on Titan. 100 ships, 20,000 warriors. They intend to take this base and use it as a staging ground for an assault on Earth's moon." On the display showed the tactical situation. Titan Base was humanity's largest military installation outside Earth orbit. 5,000 defenders, 34 warships, extensive tunnel systems carved into the moon's icy crust. But against 100 Vorkth ships, it was nothing. "We cannot evacuate," Drake continued. "If we abandon Titan, the Vorkth establish a forward base within striking distance of Earth. Our defensive calculations show that Earth falls within 6 months if Titan is lost." Silence. "So we hold," Elena said. "Yes, Major, we hold." "For how long?" Drake's eyes met hers. "As long as it takes for reinforcements to arrive. Admiral Lyra Ashford is assembling a relief force. But it will take 6 months to gather sufficient ships. 6 months. 5,000 defenders against 20,000 Vorkth. For 6 months. The numbers told their own story. They would not survive. Could not survive. But they would fight anyway, because that was what humans did. The siege of Titan began on a Tuesday. The Vorkth fleet entered orbit at 0600 hours. They did not demand surrender, did not offer terms. They had learned that humans did not surrender, that offering mercy was pointless, that the only way to end this was through overwhelming violence. They bombarded the surface installations for 3 days, turned the ice fields into steam and craters, destroyed the landing pads, the solar arrays, the communication towers. Then they sent down the troops. 20,000 Vorkth warriors, the largest single landing force in the war. They came in waves, 5,000 at a time, spreading across the surface, securing positions, preparing to assault the tunnel entrances that led to the base's underground levels. Elena's Ghost Battalion held the northern approaches, 500 soldiers against 4,000 Vorkth. She stood in the command bunker and watched the enemy markers advance across the tactical display. 4,000 heat signatures, moving with predatory precision, coordinated, disciplined, unstoppable. "All units," she said into the comm, "remember your training. We are not trying to beat them. We are trying to slow them. Every minute we buy is another minute for Earth. Every warrior we kill is one less in the next battle. Make them pay for every meter." The first wave hit the perimeter at 1400 hours. The Vorkth expected fortifications, bunkers, gun emplacements. Instead, they found open ground. Flat ice fields with nowhere to hide, no cover, nothing but empty space between them and the tunnel entrances. They should have known it was a trap. The ice beneath their feet was not solid. It was a lattice of frozen methane and water carefully weakened by months of preparation, designed to hold just long enough. 3,000 Vorkth warriors advanced across the ice field. Elena pressed the detonator. The explosive charges buried beneath the ice detonated in sequence. The surface shattered, fractured into 1,000 fragments, and beneath the ice was liquid methane, supercooled, pressurized. It erupted like a geyser. The methane flash froze in Titan's atmosphere, but not before it had thrown the Vorkth warriors into the air, shattered their formations, sent them tumbling across the broken ice field. Then came the second stage, ignition. The methane caught fire, not hot fire, not the roaring flames of Earth, cold fire. Bloom and ghostly and utterly lethal in Titan's atmosphere. 1,200 Vorkth died in the first 10 seconds. The survivors retreated, regrouped, adapted, and attacked again. The battle raged for 6 months. 6 months of defending tunnel systems that honeycombed through hundreds of kilometers of ice. 6 months of fighting in corridors so narrow that Vorkth size became a disadvantage. 6 months of close combat and booby traps and desperate last stands. Elena's Ghost Battalion was reduced to 200 soldiers, then 100, then 50. They held. Other units fared worse. 3rd Battalion was wiped out defending the southern tunnel complex. 5th Battalion lost 80% of its strength holding the command level. 8th Battalion's final transmission was their commander singing the battle hymn of the Republic before the tunnel collapsed on them and 200 Vorkth warriors. But they held. The Vorkth lost 14,200 warriors in the first 3 months, another 3,000 in the 4th month. By month 5, their attack had stalled. They controlled the surface, but the base remained in human hands. And the cost of each meter gained was measured in Vorkth blood. The defenders rotated through combat zones. Fresh troops from reserve positions replaced exhausted units. Casualties were distributed across all battalions to maintain combat effectiveness. But the numbers inexorably declined. By month 6, only 1,200 defenders remained of the original 5,000. They held 12 critical junctions, 12 points where humanity's survival balanced on the edge of a knife. Elena's unit was down to 34 soldiers, 34 out of 500 who had started the siege. They were holding Junction 7 3 kilometers below the surface, the only remaining access road to the command center. The Vorkth had committed their final reserve, 5,000 warriors, fresh troops, heavily armed, determined to end this. Elena's squad had 1 heavy weapon, 8 grenades, and rifles with ammunition for maybe 30 minutes of sustained fire. They set up the final defense in a corridor carved from solid ice, 30 meters long, 3 meters wide. Kill zone. The Vorkth came at 0300 hours. They did not use tactics, did not try to outflank. They simply charged. 5,000 warriors trying to overwhelm 34 humans through sheer mass. Elena's squad opened fire. The corridor became a slaughterhouse. Bodies piled up. Vorkth warriors trampling their own dead to press the attack. The humans fell back. 10 meters, 20, 30, down to 20 soldiers, then 15, then 10. Elena was hit in the shoulder. The plasma bolt burned through her armor, melted flesh and bone. Her left arm went numb. Useless. She kept firing. Down to 6 soldiers, then 4, then 2, just her and a private named Jackson, 20 years old, farm kid from Montana. He had never fired a weapon before the war. Now he stood beside her and burned through his last magazine. Then the explosion came from behind the Vorkth lines. The tunnel collapsed. 1,000 tons of ice crashed down, cut off the Vorkth advance, buried hundreds of warriors. And through the settling dust came reinforcements. Not Vorkth, human. The relief force had arrived, 6 months early. Admiral Lyra Ashford had pushed her fleet to the breaking point, lost 17 ships in the journey. But she had made it. The siege was over. The final count, Vorkth losses 14,200 dead. Human losses 3,834 defenders, but 1,200 had survived, against 20,000 Vorkth. For 6 months, Elena Kess was promoted to lieutenant colonel, given command of an entire regiment, awarded medals she would never wear. But the real victory was not the battle. It was what happened next. Across the galaxy on 47 different worlds, species that had served the Vorkth Dominion for centuries watched the reports from Titan. Watched 5,000 humans hold against 20,000 Vorkth. Watched the Empire bleed. And they began to wonder. If humans could resist, could they? The rebellion started small. A refusal to pay tribute here. A strike at a supply depot there. But they spread. 47 worlds. Then 60. Then 80. The Vorkth Dominion, which had ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years, was fracturing. And it was all because a handful of humans had refused to die quietly. Thelraxus read the intelligence reports and knew the truth. They were losing, not the battles, not the territory, but the war. The empire was crumbling, and there was only one way to stop it. Cut off the head, destroy Earth. He sent a message to Supreme Warlord Draxon. 3 words: assemble the Armada. The largest fleet in Vorkth history assembled at the edge of the Sol system. 10,000 warships, every vessel the Dominion could spare. Ships pulled from every sector, every border, every occupied world. 2 million warriors. The entire military might of an empire that had ruled for 3 millennia, all aimed at one small blue planet. Supreme Warlord Draxon stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the Armada spread before him like a steel constellation. This was the moment he had been building toward. The final answer to the human question. Status, he demanded. His tactical officer consulted the displays. All ships in formation, Supreme Warlord. The fleet is ready to advance. And Thelraxus. Fleet Commander Thelraxus commands the vanguard. 10 dreadnoughts, 50 cruisers. He will lead the initial assault. Draxon nodded. Thelraxus had failed to predict the humans' resilience, but he was still a valuable commander, and this time failure was impossible. No force in the galaxy could stand against 10,000 ships. Signal the fleet, Draxon said. We march on Earth. We will burn their homeworld. We will extinguish their species, and the galaxy will remember what happens to prey that dares to fight back. 3 months, that was how long the journey to Sol system would take. 3 months for the largest invasion force ever assembled to cross the distance between stars. 3 months for humanity to prepare for extinction. On Earth, Ambassador Lyra Ashford stood before the United Earth Security Council and delivered her report. The Vorkth Armada has been detected at the edge of our sensor range, she said. 10,000 ships, 2 million warriors. They will reach Earth orbit in approximately 90 days. Silence filled the chamber. The council members looked at each other, some with fear, some with resignation, some with something harder: determination. What are our defensive capabilities? Asked Council Chair Martinez. General Silas Drake stood, pulled up the tactical display. Earth appeared in the center of the room, surrounded by orbiting defensive stations, ship formations, weapons platforms. We have 437 warships currently in Sol system, Drake said. Another 200 scattered across the outer colonies. If we recall them all, we can field approximately 600 ships. 600 against 10,000, Martinez said quietly. Yes, ma'am. What are our chances? Drake did not sugarcoat it. In a conventional engagement, 0. We cannot stop 10,000 ships. We cannot defeat 2 million warriors. If they reach Earth orbit and deploy ground forces, the planet falls within 6 months. Then we surrender, one council member said. We negotiate, No. The voice came from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned. An elderly woman stood. She was 93 years old, white hair, weathered face, eyes that had seen a century of human history. Her name was Dr. Sarah Chen. She had been present at First Contact, had helped design the Silent Sentinel protocols, had spent 30 years preparing for this day. We do not surrender, she said. We activate Protocol Sentinel. All of it. Martinez looked at her. Dr. Chen, I have the utmost respect for your work, but Protocol Sentinel was designed for a standard invasion force, not 10,000 ships. You are correct, Madam Chair, but Protocol Sentinel was never meant to be revealed incrementally. We have been showing the Vorkth pieces. Now we show them everything. Drake pulled up a new file. Council members leaned forward. For 30 years, Dr. Chen said, we have been building in secret. The Vorkth think we are scrambling, reacting, building weapons in desperation as the war progresses. They are wrong. We have been preparing since the day we detected their first signal. The display showed the asteroid belt, but not the empty void the Vorkth sensors saw. Instead, it lit up with thousands of structures, shipyards, factories, weapons platforms, all hidden, all waiting. 5,000 shipyards, Dr. Chen continued, built inside asteroids, shielded from scans, powered by fusion reactors that vent heat directly into the asteroid cores, making them invisible to thermal detection. For 3 decades, these facilities have been constructing warships. A new number appeared on the display, 4,700 ships. 4,700 warships, Drake said, equal to Vorkth technology, some superior, all crewed and ready. Council members stared. But we've only ever fielded 600 ships, Martinez said. Where are the rest? Hidden, Dr. Chen replied. In the asteroid belt, in the Kuiper belt. In orbit around gas giants, their heat signatures masked by planetary radiation. We have been preparing for exactly this scenario, the day when the Vorkth would commit everything to destroying Earth. She pulled up another display. This one showed Earth itself, but not the planet the Vorkth had been observing. Instead, the display revealed underground complexes, weapons silos, shield generators, millions of concealed defensive installations. Every major city on Earth has been fortified, Dr. Chen said. Not in the last 3 years. In the last 30. We have underground bunkers that can shelter 3 billion people. We have weapons caches that can supply resistance fighters for a decade. We have shield generators powerful enough to deflect orbital bombardment. Another display. This one showed personnel counts. 500 million trained militia, Drake said. Every able-bodied citizen between 18 and 60 has undergone combat training, guerrilla tactics, urban warfare, resistance operations. We have more trained soldiers than the Vorkth have warriors. Martinez looked at the numbers, at the ships, at the defenses. This is incredible, but why hide it? Why not deploy these ships earlier? We could have ended the war years ago. Dr. Chen smiled. It was not a kind smile. Because we needed the Vorkth to commit, she said. We needed them to believe they were winning. We needed them to pull ships from every sector, strip their defenses, concentrate everything on Earth, and now they have. 10,000 ships, 2 million warriors, their entire military. She zoomed out the display, showed the Vorkth Empire, dozens of worlds, hundreds of installations, all marked with one status, minimal defense. While they march on Earth, Dr. Chen said, their empire is defenseless. The rebellions are spreading. 80 worlds now. Soon it will be 200. The Vorkth have committed everything to destroying us. Which means if we win this battle, we do not just save Earth, we end the Dominion. Silence. Then Martinez spoke. You planned this, all of it. The long war, the losses, the suffering. You planned for the Vorkth to commit everything to Earth. Yes. How many did we lose while waiting? 23 million civilians, 42,000 military personnel. And you let them die. Dr. Chen's eyes were hard. I let them sacrifice themselves for the survival of our species and the freedom of the galaxy. Every life lost bought us time to prepare. Every city destroyed convinced the Vorkth that we were weak. Every battle we barely won made them believe they could defeat us if they just committed enough force. She looked around the chamber. War is not about winning battles. It is about positioning your enemy where you want them, making them believe what you want them to believe, and then striking when they are most vulnerable. The Vorkth are coming here to end us. Instead, this is where we end them. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded. Activate Protocol Sentinel, all of it. Show them what humanity has been hiding. The Vorkth fleet crossed into the Sol system on a Monday. 10,000 ships, moving in perfect formation, expecting to find 600 human vessels in a poorly defended planet. Instead, they found 5,300 ships waiting for them. Thelraxus stared at his tactical display. The numbers did not make sense, could not make sense. His intelligence had been clear. Humans had 600 ships, maybe 700 if they recalled distant patrols. But the sensors showed 5,300 vessels, arrayed in battle formation around Earth, ships that had not existed yesterday, ships that had appeared from nowhere. He opened a channel to the Supreme Warlord. My lord, there are 5,000 human warships in defensive positions around Earth. This is This is impossible. Our intelligence, your intelligence was wrong, Draxon snarled, or the humans have been hiding their true strength. On Earth, Admiral Lyra Ashford stood on the bridge of the flagship Indomitable and watched the Vorkth fleet approach. Beside her, General Drake coordinated ground defenses. Dr. Vivian Archer monitored her Echo drone swarms, and Elena Kess commanded the combined fleet's assault wings. All ships, this is Admiral Ashford, Lyra said. The Vorkth have come to destroy our home. They think we are weak. They think we are prey. They are about to learn the truth. For 30 years, we have prepared for this moment. For 30 years, we have built in secret. For 30 years, we have waited. Today, we show them what humanity really is. All ships engage at will. 5,300 human warships surged forward. The Battle of Saul had begun. The space battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 10,000 Vorkth ships versus 5,300 human vessels. Nearly 2-to-1 odds. In any conventional battle, the Vorkth would have won. But this was not a conventional battle. The human fleet did not meet the Vorkth in a direct engagement. Instead, they used the solar system itself as a weapon. The first wave of ships accelerated toward Jupiter. The massive gas giant's gravity well became a slingshot. Ships whipped around the planet, emerging at velocities the Vorkth could not match. They struck the Vorkth vanguard from unexpected vectors. Hit, retreated, repositioned. The second wave deployed from the asteroid belt. Thousands of drones, Dr. Vivian Archer's echo weapons. They accelerated to 0.95 light speed, too fast to intercept, too many to stop. 1,600 Vorkth ships died in the first hour. Draxon watched his fleet hemorrhage vessels and felt something he had not felt in 2 centuries. Fear. These were not the scrambling, desperate humans his intelligence had described. These were warriors who had been planning this battle for 3 decades, who had prepared every move, who had turned the solar system into a kill box. Pull back the fleet, he ordered. Establish defensive formation. We regroup and, my lord, his tactical officer said, the asteroid belt. The display updated. The asteroids were moving, not drifting, moving with purpose, with coordination, because they were not asteroids. They were weapons platforms, thousands of them, hidden for 30 years, now activated. Railguns emerged from concealed ports, each one capable of firing projectiles at 0.9 light speed, projectiles that could punch through Vorkth shields, through armor, through entire ships. The platforms opened fire. Another 800 Vorkth ships died in the barrage, but the Vorkth were not defeated. They were predators, and predators did not flee. They adapted. The fleet split into smaller formations, harder to target, more maneuverable. They began picking off human ships one by one, using their superior weapons to devastating effect. The human fleet took casualties, heavy casualties. Ship after ship exploded under Vorkth plasma fire. Crews died, soldiers died, friends died. But the humans did not break. They had known this would be costly, had accepted it. Every life lost bought Earth another minute, another hour, another day. Elena Kess commanded the assault carrier Justice, 50 fighter craft under her command. She led them in dive after dive against Vorkth cruisers, lost 3 pilots in the first hour, 5 in the second, 10 in the third. Her own ship took a plasma lance through the starboard engine. The blast tore through the hull, killed 30 crew members, crippled the carrier. All hands abandon ship, she ordered. Get to the escape pods. Her bridge crew stared at her. That's an order. They fled. Elena stayed. Someone had to keep the ship stable long enough for the evacuation. Someone had to make sure the Justice died well. When the last escape pod launched, she programmed a final course. Straight at the nearest Vorkth dreadnought. The Justice accelerated, damaged engines screaming. Hull groaning under stress. She rammed the dreadnought at 0.3 light speed. Both ships exploded in a flash of nuclear fire. Elena ejected in the last possible second. Her escape pod tumbled through space, picked up 3 hours later by a human recovery ship. She had survived. Again. But the Justice was gone, and 30 of her crew with it. The battle raged for 3 days. 3 days of constant combat, ships maneuvering, firing, dying. The space around Earth became a graveyard. Wrecked hulls, frozen corpses, debris fields that would orbit for centuries. Human losses were catastrophic. 3,200 ships destroyed. But the Vork's losses were worse. 6,800 ships gone, more than half their fleet, destroyed by a species they had dismissed as prey. On day 4, something changed. Earth's planetary defense grid activated. 12,000 railgun emplacements emerged from hidden silos, built over 30 years, positioned across every continent, every island, every mobile platform in the ocean. They had been waiting for the Vork to come into range. Now they fired. The barrage lit up Earth's atmosphere like a second sun. 12,000 railguns firing in sequence, each shot traveling at .9 light speed. Each impact carrying kinetic energy equivalent to a tactical nuclear weapon. 1,200 Vork ships died in the first salvo. The survivors retreated, pulled back beyond the railgun's range. Regrouped, they had lost 7,000 ships, 7,000 out of 10,000, 70% of the largest fleet ever assembled, and Earth still stood. Draxon stood on his damaged flagship and stared at the planet that had destroyed his armada. The small blue world that was supposed to be easy prey. He had failed, completely, catastrophically. His empire was crumbling, his fleet was shattered, and the humans were not finished. Thelraxus approached. His armor was scorched, his left eye blinded by shrapnel. But he was alive. "My lord," he said quietly, "we cannot win this battle. We must retreat while we still have ships. If we stay, they will destroy us all." Draxon wanted to argue, wanted to order one final assault, wanted to prove that the Vork could still win. But he looked at the tactical display, at the 3,000 ships that remained, at the 5,000 human vessels still in fighting condition, at the planetary defense grid that could annihilate his entire fleet before they reached orbit. He had lost. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Vork had lost a major battle. "Retreat," he said. His voice was hollow, defeated. "Pull back to the outer system. We need to regroup." The Vork fleet withdrew. 3,000 ships, all that remained of the armada. Behind them, Earth celebrated. But the war was not over. It was just beginning. The Vork fleet limped to the outer system. 3,000 ships, 2/3 destroyed, hundreds of thousands of warriors dead. The greatest military disaster in their history. Draxon sat alone in his quarters and tried to understand what had gone wrong. The humans were supposed to be weak, primitive, easy to conquer. Instead, they had been preparing for 30 years, building weapons, training soldiers, turning their entire civilization into a war machine. He had underestimated them, and it had cost him everything. A message came through, from Vork Prime, from the Council of Warlords. He opened it with dread. "Supreme Warlord Draxon, you are hereby ordered to return to the homeworld immediately to answer for your failures. Your command is transferred to..." Draxon closed the message. He knew what it meant. The council would strip him of rank, execute him for incompetence, make an example. But there was another option. He opened a channel to Thelraxus. "Commander, assemble your officers. I have a decision to make." Thelraxus stood in the conference room, surrounded by what remained of the command staff. Scarred, exhausted, defeated. Draxon entered, looked at each of them in turn. "We have lost this battle," he said. 7,000 ships destroyed, our warriors dead, our empire in rebellion. The council demands my return to face execution." Silence. "I will not return," Draxon continued. "I will not abandon this fight. We will regroup. We will strike at Earth's ground installations. We will..." "No, UFO." Everyone turned. Thelraxus had spoken. "What did you say?" Draxon's voice was dangerous. "I said no, Supreme Warlord." Thelraxus straightened. "I will not lead another assault on Earth. I will not sacrifice more warriors for your pride. You dare." "I dare because our species is dying," Thelraxus shouted. "We have lost 70% of our fleet. 80 worlds are in open rebellion. Our home world is defenseless. And you want to throw the rest of our forces at a planet that just destroyed 7,000 ships." Draxon's hand moved to his weapon. But Thelraxus was faster. His sidearm was already drawn, pointed at the Supreme Warlord's chest. "This ends now," Thelraxus said. "I am placing you under arrest for incompetence and reckless endangerment of the Vork species. You will stand trial, and if found guilty, you will face the consequences." The other officers drew their weapons. But not against Thelraxis, against Droxon. The supreme warlord looked around the room, saw the exhaustion, the fear, the realization that continuing this war meant extinction. He lowered his hand. Very well, Commander Thelraxis. You have won. What now? Thelraxis activated the communication system, opened a channel to Earth. This is Fleet Commander Thelraxis of the Vorkth Dominion. I am requesting terms of surrender. On Earth, the message was received in the command center. Admiral Lyra Ashford looked at General Drake. They had been fighting for 3 years, had lost millions of people, had watched cities burn and friends die, and now the enemy wanted to surrender. Should we accept? Drake asked. Lyra was quiet for a moment. Then she activated the response channel. This is Admiral Lyra Ashford of the United Earth Defense Forces. We will accept your surrender, but on our terms. You will bring your entire remaining fleet to Earth orbit. You will disarm your weapons, and you will face justice for the crimes committed against humanity. We accept, Thelraxis said, but Droxon had other plans. He had been listening, had been calculating, and he realized there was one final move available. If he could not defeat Earth in space, he would destroy it from the ground. That night, while the surrender was being negotiated, Droxon escaped from custody, took 500 loyal warriors, stole a dropship, and headed for Earth. His target, New Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. The humans had broadcast information about this city, a symbol of their resistance, a place where they claimed their ancestors had defeated invaders. Droxon would burn it to ash, would show the humans that even in defeat, the Vorkth were still predators. He did not know he was descending into the most carefully prepared trap in human history. New Gettysburg had a population of 200,000 before the war. Now it housed 50,000 people, 10,000 military, 40,000 civilian volunteers, everyone who was too old to evacuate, too stubborn to leave, too committed to fighting. Among them was Cassandra Brennan. Cass was 71 years old, a former NASA engineer. She had helped design the propulsion systems for the first colony ships, had spent 40 years working at the cutting edge of human technology. When the war came, she could have evacuated. Her granddaughter Aurora, 6 years old, had been sent to safety on the moon. Cass could have gone with her. Instead, she volunteered. Someone has to stay, she had told the evacuation coordinator. Someone has to make sure they pay for what they've done. Now she stood in the underground command center of New Gettysburg and listened to the reports. Vorkth dropship detected. Trajectory confirmed. Landing in 6 minutes. 500 Vorkth warriors led by Droxon himself. Colonel James Harrison, the military commander of New Gettysburg, pulled up the defensive plan. We have 10,000 soldiers, he said, but most are wounded veterans from other battles. We're not supposed to engage in major combat. We're a logistics hub. Then we improvise, Cass said, like we always do. The city had been preparing for months. Every building fortified, every street pre-sighted for weapons fire. The tunnel network extended, supplies stockpiled, and every civilian over age 60 had been organized into defense units. Cass commanded Silver Squad, 150 volunteers. Average age 68. They were teachers, doctors, engineers, shopkeepers. People who had lived full lives, who had grandchildren they would never see again, but who refused to let Earth fall without a fight. Droxon's dropship landed in the northern plaza at dawn. 500 Vorkth warriors emerged, the finest of the elite, warriors who had survived 3 years of war, who had faced humans and won. They spread through the city in hunting formations, expected resistance, expected traps. They found both, but they also found something else. Determination that transcended logic, courage that defied calculation. Humans who fought not because they thought they could win, but because surrender was unthinkable. Droxon led his elite guard toward the city center, toward the old courthouse that served as the symbol of human government here. He would raise the Vorkth flag over that building, would broadcast the image to Earth, show them that even their sacred symbols could fall. The plaza in front of the courthouse was empty. Droxon stopped, scanned the area. His predatory instincts screamed danger. Spread out, he ordered. Check every. The buildings on all 4 sides opened fire. Not soldiers. Civilians, armed with hunting rifles and shotguns and homemade weapons, firing from windows and rooftops and basement positions. Droxon's guard took casualties. 10 warriors down in the first seconds. 20, 30, they returned fire. Plasma lances tore through the buildings, but for every human that fell, another appeared. And from the tunnels beneath the plaza, Cass's Silver Squad emerged. 150 elderly humans against 500 Vorkth elite. The math was impossible, the outcome predetermined. But math didn't account for the fact that these humans had already lost everything that mattered. Their families were safe. Their lives were behind them. They had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Cass carried a rifle that had belonged to her late husband, a hunting weapon from 70 years ago. She fired it with the steady calm of someone who had made peace with death. Her first shot took down a Vorkth warrior at 200 meters. Her second killed another. Around her, Silver Squad moved through the Pesa with grim efficiency. They had trained for this, drilled the movements until they became instinct. They used the terrain, the rubble, the smoke. They turned the plaza into a killing ground. Draxon watched his elite warriors fall to elderly humans with primitive weapons and felt something crack inside him. This was not how it was supposed to end. He was the supreme warlord, the ruler of an empire, the greatest warrior of his generation. He could not fall to prey. He charged forward, personally, cutting through Silver Squad with his claws, killing with brutal efficiency. 10 humans fell before him, 20, 30, and then he came face to face with Cass. 71 years old, 5'3", 120 pounds, against 8.5 feet of muscle and scale and predatory rage. She looked up at him and smiled. "You must be the one in charge," she said. Draxon stared down at the tiny human. "You should be afraid." "I am afraid," Cass said, "but I'm doing it anyway. That's what courage is." She raised her rifle, fired. The shot was perfect. Caught Draxon in the throat just above his armor, but it was not enough. His scales were too thick. The bullet deflected. He knocked the rifle from her hands, lifted her off the ground with one massive hand. "You have cost me everything," he said. "My fleet, my empire, my honor. And for what, you cannot even hurt me." Cass looked into his eyes, saw the rage, the desperation, the fear. "I'm just a grandmother from Houston," she said. "I came here because my granddaughter deserves to grow up free. You wanted to prove you're apex predators." She pressed the detonator hidden in her jacket. "Congratulations. You proved we're the ones who hunt predators." The explosive vest detonated. The blast killed Draxon instantly. The supreme warlord, the ruler of the Vorkth Dominion, killed by a 71-year-old grandmother who refused to let tyranny win. Cass died in the explosion. So did 30 Vorkth warriors in the immediate vicinity. But her sacrifice broke the enemy assault. The surviving Vorkth warriors, leaderless, facing an enemy that would rather die than surrender, made a choice. They fled. Ran from a city full of humans who should have been easy prey. Ran from warriors who were old and wounded and outmatched. Ran from people who simply would not stop fighting. When the battle ended, 423 Vorkth warriors were dead, including Draxon. 77 had surrendered. Of the 50,000 human defenders, 47,000 had died. But New Gettysburg still stood, and the galaxy heard about it. Heard about the grandmother who killed the supreme warlord. Heard about Silver Squad. Heard about humans who fought until they couldn't breathe. And the rebellions exploded. 200 worlds rose against the Vorkth. Then 300, then 500. The Dominion, which had ruled for 3,000 years, collapsed in 6 months. The peace treaty was signed on the human ship Remembrance. The name was deliberate, a reminder of what had been lost, what had been sacrificed, what would never be forgotten. Ambassador Lyra Ashford represented humanity. She was 57 now. The war had aged her, but it had also given her purpose. Across from her sat Thelraxus, now the de facto leader of what remained of the Vorkth. His left eye was still blind from the Battle of Saul. His scales carried scars from a dozen battles. He looked tired. "The terms," Lyra said, sliding the document across the table. Thelraxus read through them slowly. "The Vorkth Dominion will immediately cease all military operations against humanity and allied species. The Vorkth will release all prisoners of war and all enslaved populations. The Vorkth will surrender 90% of their remaining military vessels. The Vorkth will pay reparations to affected worlds. The Vorkth will submit to war crimes tribunals for actions committed during the war." He looked up. These terms will destroy what remains of our civilization. Yes, Lyra said, they will, just as you tried to destroy ours. What of my people? What of the Vorkth who did not choose this war, who followed orders, who believed they were serving their empire? Lyra was quiet for a moment, then she leaned forward. You want to know what we are? She asked. You spent 3 years trying to figure it out. Let me tell you. She gestured to the viewport. Beyond Earth hung in space. Scarred, wounded, but unbroken. We are not predators, she said. We are not prey. We are survivors. That is what you never understood. Thelraxus said nothing. You evolved to hunt, Lyra continued, to kill, to win quickly and move on to the next target. When something fought back, you destroyed it with overwhelming force. You never learned patience. You never learned to lose and keep fighting. She stood, walked to the viewport. My people evolved on a world that tried to kill us every single day. Predators hunted us. Diseases killed us. The weather destroyed our homes. Other humans attacked us. We should have gone extinct 100 times. But we didn't. We survived because we learned something that you will never understand. What? Thelraxus asked. Lyra turned to face him. Survival is not about being the strongest. It is about being the one who refuses to die. It is about getting up after every defeat. It is about fighting when there is no hope, because fighting is all that matters. It is about loving something so much that you will suffer anything to protect it. She walked back to the table, sat down. You were apex predators, she said. You feared nothing in the galaxy, but you made one mistake. You attacked the one species in the universe that was more stubborn, more vengeful, and more determined than you. You attacked the species that taught itself to hunt predators. She slid a pen across the table. Sign the treaty. Rebuild your civilization. Learn to live in peace. Because if you ever threaten another species again, we will be watching. And next time we will not be so merciful. Thelraxus looked at the pen, at the treaty, at the human who had just dictated terms of surrender to an empire that had ruled for 3 millennia. He signed. The War Crimes Tribunal lasted 2 years. Droxane was dead, but his generals stood trial, his commanders, his politicians. Some were executed, some imprisoned, some exiled. The Vorkth species was reorganized, their military reduced to defensive forces only, their government restructured, their culture examined and reformed. Thelraxus led the Reformation. He was not a warlord anymore. He was a statesman, working to rebuild his species' place in the galaxy. He established education programs, taught young Vorkth about the war, about what had been lost, about why it must never happen again. The history books called it the Great Shame, the period when the Vorkth had believed they were invincible, when they had conquered and enslaved, when they had finally met an enemy that taught them the cost of arrogance. Every year on the anniversary of New Gettysburg, Thelraxus visited Earth, visited the memorial, visited the statue. The grandmother who defied death, Cassandra Brennan, 71 years old, 5'3", 120 pounds, who had killed a supreme warlord and broken an empire. 5 years after the war ended, Elena Kess stood on the observation deck of Earth's orbital command station and watched the planet below. She was 37 years old, Fleet Admiral now, commander of the United Earth Defense Forces, protector of the homeworld. The scars from Titan had healed, mostly. Her left arm still ached when the weather changed, a reminder of the plasma bolt that had nearly killed her. But she was alive. So many weren't. Ryan, her friends from New Austin, the crew of the Justice, 42,000 military personnel, 23 million civilians. She visited their memorials when she could, spoke their names, remembered their faces. Never forget, never surrender, never stop fighting. Her comm chirped. Admiral Kess, we have a situation. Report. Long-range sensors have detected unusual signals. Origin point approximately 10,000 light-years beyond the galactic rim. Analysis suggests artificial origin. Possible faster-than-light communication. Elena felt something cold settle in her stomach. Another species, unknown, ma'am, but the signal patterns suggest advanced technology, possibly more advanced than anything we've encountered. She looked out at Earth, at the planet that had survived, at the civilization that had refused to die. They had defeated the Vorkth, had ended the Dominion, had shown the galaxy that even the apex predators could fall. But the galaxy was vast and full of unknowns. Establish monitoring protocol, she ordered. Track those signals and prepare a message. What message, Admiral? Elena thought about Cass, about Ryan, about Margaret Winters and Declan Walsh, and everyone who had died so that humanity could survive. Prepare a standard first contact greeting, she said, but also prepare a warning, just in case. 6 months later, the signals resolved into a message from a species that called themselves the Croath Collective, a species that had been watching the war between humans and Vorkth with great interest, a species that believed they could succeed where the Vorkth had failed. Their message was simple. We are coming, we are inevitable, resistance is futile. Elena Kess sat in the command center and read the message. Then she drafted a response. She thought carefully about the words, about what humanity had learned, about what they had become, and she sent This is Admiral Elena Kess of the Human Federation. You are approaching a system that will defend itself. We know you think we will be easy prey. Every predator before you thought the same. We are the species that hunted mammoths with sticks and climbed from caves to stars in 100,000 years. We are the species that defeated the Vorkth Dominion, the empire that ruled for 3,000 years, the predators that feared nothing. We are not the strongest. We are not the fastest. We are not the most advanced, but we are the ones who refuse to die. We are the prey that learn to hunt hunters. We are the monsters that monsters fear. Come if you must, but remember we do not fight fair. We do not give up. We never forget. This is your only warning. Earth stands ready. The message transmitted across 10,000 light years, across the void, into the darkness. And on Earth, 5,300 warships powered up their weapons. 100,000 echo drones armed themselves. 12,000 planetary defense railguns swiveled to face the sky. 500 million trained militia checked their weapons. And humanity waited, not with fear, with determination, because they had learned the most important lesson in the galaxy. To protect the weak, you must become what predators fear. And humanity would use that power wisely. But they would use it. Deep in the tunnels beneath New Gettysburg, carved into the memorial wall, someone had added a new inscription. Below Cassandra Brennan's name, below the list of the fallen, a single line. They came as conquerors. They left knowing what it means to be prey. And beside it, one more line, added by Elena Kess herself during her last visit to the memorial. We will remember. We will endure. We will serve off. Always. Because that was what humanity did. Somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Croath Collective received the message. Read it, consider their options, and perhaps, just perhaps, decided that there were easier targets in the galaxy. Targets that had not spent 3 years bleeding the apex predators dry. Targets that did not turn their own cities into weapons. Targets that did not send grandmothers with explosives to kill emperors. The message went unanswered. The Croath Collective changed course, and Earth remained. Scarred, wounded, but unbroken and free.